Curtis Berryman had driven this stretch of Highway 27 so often it felt like part of his own blood. Every bend, every tree lining the shoulder, every fading signpost passed without effort. His old dust-covered Ford F-150 rattled gently as he eased off the road toward a nearly empty Sinclair gas station. He had just hugged his daughter goodbye in Spartanburg, their first proper visit in months, and peach cobbler still lingered on his breath. Now he was headed home to Charlotte, hoping to beat the sunset and reheat the chili waiting in his kitchen. The station was quiet. A denim-vested trucker filled diesel near the back. A teenage girl behind the counter scribbled into a notebook. Curtis parked beside pump 3, stepped out, stretched his back, the old injury from Kuwait still tugging on his shoulder, and slid his card into the reader. He wasn't in a rush, wasn't expecting trouble, but trouble never needs an invitation. The distant growl came before the chrome flashed. 4 motorcycles pulled in like a pack of wolves, their engines barking through the thick August air. The lead rider's bike, a gleaming red with flame decals, roared louder than the others. He had sun-bleached hair, tied back in arms like coiled rope, inked to the knuckles. A patch on his vest read, Spine Dogs, MC Cherokee Chapter. Curtis didn't flinch. He just watched the numbers tick up on the pump. The riders parked diagonally near pump 1, loud and territorial. One swaggered into the store. The others cracked beers, lit cigarettes, and filled the air with laughter that didn't carry any warmth. Curtis finished fueling and reached for his door when it started. "Hey, old man, you lost or something?" a voice called out. Curtis didn't even glance. Another step. "I'm talking to you." Now he looked, just a little enough to see the speaker. Big guy, patchy beard, arms tattooed, chewing sunflower seeds like his jaw was on autopilot. His name tag read Tanker. Curtis gave him a slow nod. "Just getting gas." Tankard grinned, like a dog baring teeth. Didn't know out-of-towners were welcome. Curtis looked him straight in the eye, steady as stone, not looking for trouble, just heading home. Another biker joined, shorter, bulkier, holding a thick chain leashed to a pit bull. He smirked. "Look at him, he's shaking." But Curtis wasn't shaking, not even close. He shifted his weight, calm, feet planted, spine straight, a stance he hadn't forgotten from battlefields halfway across the world. "You ex-military?" Tanker asked, cocking his head. "Got that stiff soldier look." Curtis didn't smile. "Is that meant to be funny?" The pit bull handler chuckled. "These quiet ones, always hiding something." Another man stepped out of the store with a six-pack, noticing the scene unfolding. "Yo, Dean, you messing with that guy?" Dean, apparently the short one, waved him off, just chatting. The fourth biker, bald with mirrored shades, popped a beer by his bike. "Doesn't seem like he wants to talk." Curtis kept his gaze on Tanker, who stepped closer. "You got a name?" "Yeah," Curtis answered. "Didn't ask for yours." That quiet defiance sent a ripple through the group. Curtis opened his door just enough to grab his keys, nothing else, but Dean didn't like the movement. "You reaching for something, Grandpa?" Curtis stayed calm. "Just my keys." "You see a weapon?" Dean puffed his chest. "You trying to act tough?" Curtis didn't blink. "I don't act. I already earned it." That was Dean's cue. A shove, not hard, just a test. Curtis took a step back, eyes locked. Then, after a long breath, he spoke with the chill of mountain stone. "I'll give you one chance. Back away." Tanker laughed. "Or what? You gonna give us a sermon?" But Dean stepped in again, this time, shoving harder. That's when the air changed out. Curtis didn't shout, didn't flinch. He simply pivoted, caught Dean's wrist mid, and twisted. Dean dropped like a tree to one knee, grunting in shock. Curtis let go just as fast. Dean scrambled up, face red, pride stung. "You son of a," he lunged. Curtis sidestepped, hooked his arm, and sent him spinning. Dean hit the pavement with a solid thud. The air knocked out of him. The bald one stood now. "Yo, Tanker, back off. This guy's different." Curtis turned toward him, voice steady. "I asked to be left alone." Tanker hadn't moved, but something in his stance wavered. Not fear, not yet, just recognition. This wasn't a man trying to impress. This was a man who'd seen real war and didn't need to prove a damn thing. Wheezed. "He broke my shoulder." "No," Curtis replied. "You landed on it." Inside, the teenage clerk was whispering everything to 911. They started it. The old guy never even raised his voice, but when he moved, it was like lightning. Outside, Curtis stood still, watching them. Dean stayed down. The others didn't dare move closer. Tanker cracked his neck, trying to reclaim control. "You think that scare tactic worked?" Curtis didn't answer. His posture was the answer. Still, calm, unmoved. And the more he stayed quiet, the louder the fear became in their heads. Tanker stepped forward, boots stomping hard. But even he knew, this wave wasn't one you wanted to crash into. Curtis didn't blink as Tanker circled him, posture loose but his eyes sharp. "So there's some fight in you after all, huh?" The biker smirked, trying to read him. But Curtis didn't play those games. His voice stayed calm. "I'm not here to fight, but if you lay a hand on me, you'll regret it." The words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. Curtis didn't posture, didn't bluff, and a smarter man would have seen it. He wasn't some worn-out retiree with a sore shoulder and a soft story. He was Staff Sergeant Curtis Berryman, 22 years in the U.S. Army, half that time spent in places where the dirt burned through your boots and the air buzzed with danger. Fallujah, Kandahar. Missions no one spoke about in daylight. He had been the man they sent when talks failed, when things went quiet before they exploded. Curtis never bragged about those years, not because they haunted him, but because they lived quietly inside his bones. Like that night outside Mosul, 2008, when bullets lit the sky for hours, he'd dragged a bleeding soldier out from death's reach, using a torn sleeve as a tourniquet. They gave him a medal for it. He never once wore it. He didn't need symbols to remember what it meant to survive. Now, with Tanker stepping closer and the silence thickening, Curtis didn't move. He didn't have to. Every inch of his body knew what to do. His stance shifted barely a weight to his back foot, shoulders loose, just enough. A girl behind the counter stopped talking. Mid-call, her breath caught in her chest. Curtis's mind didn't panic. It prioritized. Assess. Control. Respond only when needed. You're one of those quiet, tough guys, huh? Tanker barked. Act all zen, and scare people with your vet stare. You don't know me, Curtis said, without blinking. Damn right I don't, Tanker sneered. But you won't forget me. Dean, still crumpled on the ground, tried one last whisper. Don't do it, man, ... But Tanker kept coming. Curtis's fingers stayed relaxed, but his body was wound tight, not from fear, but readiness. When Tanker moved, Curtis didn't. Not yet. The warning came first. This is your last chance. Tanker laughed through his nose. Or what? You gonna dial 911 and cry? Curtis exhaled slowly. That call's already been made. I'm just giving you the choice. Walk away or ride out in an ambulance. That did it. Tanker lunged, arms swinging. Curtis sidestepped like it was a dance he'd practiced in another life. He let the man stumble past, then swept his leg clean. From under him, the biker hit the ground with a painful crack. Not injured, but humiliated. The kind of fall that breaks ego, not bones. Curtis didn't gloat. He didn't move. He just stood, silent, watching. Tanker groaned, rolling onto his palms. His chest heaved, not with pain, but frustration. He glanced up. Curtis hadn't even shifted position. That hurt worse than the fall. The other bikers were frozen. Dean sat slumped, holding his arm. The bald one with the beer had quietly set his can down. Even the pit bull on its leash went still, sensing something his owner didn't. The tension was no longer bravado. It was recognition. Curtis was different. Tanker's mouth twitched. He spat to the side and pointed at Curtis. You think you're better than me? You just got lucky. Curtis answered with steel in his tone. You've already lost twice. You think those little army tricks make you untouchable? Curtis stepped forward once. I think you're trying to prove something to your crew, he said, but they've already seen enough. It hit Tanker harder than any punch. Truth. Always does. But some men can't walk away when there's still noise to make. He turned toward the bald biker. Brick, you just gonna stand there? Brick didn't move. Man, it's not worth it. He jumped Dean. No, Brick replied flatly. Dean shoved him first twice. He just handled it. Dean muttered weakly. He nearly broke my arm. You rushed him, Brick said. He finished it. That's all. Now, even Tanker's own boys weren't buying it. His little power show had collapsed. And like all men, whose authority is made of sound, not substance, he overreached. Fine, he growled, storming to his bike. His hand dove into the saddlebag. Curtis didn't flinch. He just shifted, prepared. Not afraid. Ready? Tanker. Don't, Brick warned. Whatever you're thinking, drop it. But Tanker pulled something out, a thick chain, not a weapon by law, but enough to tip the balance. The links clinked against the pavement like a threat. He grinned. Wild now. Let's see if you block this. Tough guy? Curtis tilted his head. Your idea of balance. Me empty-handed, you swinging steel. Tanker twirled at once, just leveling the field, but they all knew that wasn't it. Then, without warning, he swung. Curtis ducked. Smooth, precise. One hand caught the wrist midair. The other jabbed into Tanker's ribs, not to hurt but to fold. Before the biker could recover, Curtis twisted. The arm yanked it forward and drove a knee into the thigh. Tanker dropped the chain with a yelp and crumbled again. This time, he didn't get up. No one said a word. Even Brick looked away. The girl inside whispered into the phone, "Second guy's down now. I think it's over. Please tell them to hurry." Curtis stood, breathing steady, eyes locked on Tanker, as he rolled onto his back and raised both hands. Not in surrender to Curtis, but to the sound of engines rolling in. 2 squad cars. No lights, no sirens, just presence. Doors opened, boots hit pavement. The lead deputy approached with practiced calm. Curtis recognized the posture. A man who'd worn a badge but maybe once wore a uniform too. Russell Ames, the name tag read. The younger one, still fresh-faced, stood behind him, hand resting near his taser, not drawn, just watching. And Curtis stood there, still and calm, waiting, because the only thing louder than noise is silence with purpose. He only needed a glance to figure out who had the room under control. "What's going on here?" Russell asked, voice firm but not confrontational. Before anyone could respond, the gas station clerk pushed through the doors. Cordless phone, still clutched in her hand. "It was them," she said, pointing directly at the bikers. "They started it. He didn't do anything." Russell raised a calming hand. One at a time. Curtis stood where he was, steady, composed, not defensive. Russell looked to him again. "You okay, sir?" "I'm fine," Curtis replied evenly. Still on the ground, tried to chime in. "He jumped me." "No, he didn't." The clerk cut in sharply, stepping up. "That one," she pointed at Dean, "shoved him twice. The old guy didn't lift a hand until they came at him with a chain." Dean groaned from his place on the ground. "My shoulders jacked up." "Was it ever right?" Brick muttered. Russell motioned to his partner. "Rodriguez, get statements. Start with her. Check if the cameras caught everything. Should be one on each front corner." Rodriguez nodded and headed into the store with the clerk. Back outside, Russell turned to Curtis. "Mind walking me through it?" Curtis didn't raise his voice. He didn't embellish. He simply laid it out. "They pulled in while I was fueling. Said nothing at first. Then they started talking, trying to bait me. One of them shoved me. I asked him to back off. He didn't. The other came at me with a chain," I responded. "You throw the first punch." "No," Curtis said. "Not once." Brick stepped forward. "He's telling it straight. I saw it all. Dean shoved him twice. He just reacted." "You part of their crew?" Russell asked. "I am," Brick said. "But I'm not about to lie. That man didn't start this. Wasn't even looking for a fight." Russell gave a short nod, then crouched slightly in front of Tanker. "Want to confirm or contradict anything?" Tanker didn't meet his eyes. He looked down, jaw tight. Inside the store, Rodriguez and the clerk stood over the monitor. The sound was muted, but the footage spoke clearly. Dean's shove, then another. Curtis's stillness. Tanker's charge with the chain. The controlled takedown. Rodriguez stepped out and called over. "Video backs him up. No escalation. Just self-defense." Russell turned back to Curtis. "You carrying a weapon?" "No. Military. Retired." Russell nodded slowly. "Figures you don't move like a guy who learned that in a bar brawl." Curtis gave a modest shrug. "Just muscle memory." "Sharp memory," Russell said, then turned to Dean. "We'll get Ems to check that arm. You want to file a report? That's your right, but you might want to think twice. That video doesn't lie." Dean didn't say anything. Tanker still hadn't lifted his head. Russell swept his eyes across the scene. "I'm not filing charges unless someone insists. But my advice? Get back on the road, and don't give anyone else a reason to call us." Brick nodded. "Understood." Curtis turned and walked back to his truck. As he opened the door, Russell called out, "Berryman right." Curtis paused. Russell gave a short nod of acknowledgement. Curtis eased back onto Highway 27, hands steady on the wheel. No tremble, no anger. The adrenaline had already drained by the time he passed the edge of the lot. He'd been through worse. Much worse. But that didn't mean the weight of it didn't settle afterward. It always did. He turned on the radio. Static AM talk. He clicked it off again. No interest in noise. Not tonight. Just the hum of tires and the Carolina sky dimming to orange. Curtis motioned toward the old wooden porch chairs, and both men settled into silence, broken only by the steady hum of cicadas nearby. "I thought the whole thing would fade out," Curtis finally said, voice low. "It might have," Russell replied, "until the video hit the internet." Curtis let out a slow breath, clearly weary. "That was never the plan." Russell gave a knowing shrug. "No one plans for it, but it finds you." Curtis stared down the quiet street, watching, as neighbors walked by, pretending not to notice him. People love a headline, even if they don't care about the truth beneath it. Russell turned to him. "Though why you think I'm here?" Curtis didn't answer. "I came to thank you," Russell said softly. "Not for what you did, but for how you did it. I've been in law enforcement nearly 2 decades. Most people, when they feel threatened, they lose control. You didn't." Curtis didn't speak, but his eyes sharpened. By sunrise the next day, the name Curtis Berryman was on everyone's lips, from the diner in Gaffney to the barbershop in Spartanburg. Though most didn't know him personally, they sure had a lot to say. At Royce's family diner, the breakfast crowd buzzed. "Didn't even flinch," said Jerome Tate, a retired basketball coach, still stunned. "You see the way he stopped that guy with the chain? That's training, not adrenaline." Across the table, Wallace Dunn sipped coffee and grumbled, "Y'all are underestimating this man. I heard it was 5 of them. 5 bikers taken down by one guy." Jerome raised a brow. "It was 3 tops. I watched it 6 times. He never even clenched a fist. Just ... redirected." At the back, 2 teens were glued to TikTok, one whispering, "He just moved to Charlotte. Dude's like a ghost." The video made it to Curtis's old army buddy, Lloyd Penner, who hadn't spoken to him in a year. He spotted the clip in a veterans group in Berryman, he muttered, still razor sharp. He called 3 times before Curtis picked up. "Look at you, famous now." Lloyd chuckled. Curtis's voice was quiet. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Yeah, well, fame doesn't wait for permission." Curtis sat on his porch, feet on an old cinder block, staring at the tree line. Some say you did right, Lloyd added. Others think you went too far. You all right? Curtis gave a slow nod, then remembered Lloyd couldn't see him. Yeah, just tired. Lloyd laughed. Told you to retire in Wyoming, nothing out there but elk and silence. But Curtis didn't stay for silence. He stayed for his daughter. His roots that afternoon. The next knock wasn't from police or precinct, was from a woman in her 50s. Streaks of silver in her hair, denim jacket, neat. She introduced herself as Yvette Delancey, part of a group that advocated for veterans. I know you didn't want the attention, she said kindly, but people are listening. They deserve the truth, not clicks. Curtis eyed her. And what do you want from me? Nothing, just honesty. No camera crew. No microphone, just a notebook and soft eyes. He motioned to a chair. Sit, I'll talk, but you tell. It's straight. For 30 minutes they spoke not just about the gas station but war, transition, being invisible until someone picks a fight. When she asked, what went through your mind when that chain came out? He paused. I didn't want to hurt him, but I knew I might have to. Were you scared? She asked. No, he replied, just sick of people thinking silence means fear. When she left, she didn't promise a hero piece, and that's what he respected most. Elsewhere, Dean's friends gathered in a garage, watching the clip again. See thing? That old man humiliated our boy, Juan muttered. Dean had a limp now. They talked big but none dared act yet. The internet had chosen a side. Curtis didn't pull a weapon, didn't gloat, he just handled it. But one of those boys made a phone call anyway, and whatever he said, it reignited everything. Curtis didn't hear about it right away, but by the weekend, something in the air had shifted. Saturday morning, his daughter showed up without warning, Prius in the driveway, knocking like she expected him to hide. Curtis opened the door, slippers on, newspaper under one arm. Tasha, he said, surprised. You weren't answering, she said, brushing past him into the kitchen like she never moved out. So I drove. He followed slowly. Didn't think it was that serious? Dad, she turned to him, frustration masked with worry. People are saying wild things. Some call you a vigilante, others say you went too far. Someone even tagged me in a post. Like father, like daughter. I had to report it. Curtis set the paper down, frowning. I never wanted this. I know, she said gently. But it's here, and it's affecting me too. Students whispering, coworkers giving looks. She sat across from him. You think I messed up? No, she said firmly. But you need to speak, just once. Let people hear your side, not just a clip. Curtis studied her same fierce eyes she had as a girl, now tempered by life. I'm no hero, he said. Didn't start it. Didn't want to fight. But I wasn't going to be disrespected and walk away like I was nothing. Tasha reached for his hand. I know, I'm proud of you. But let them hear the whole truth. Curtis sighed. People don't want the truth, they want a story. Then give them one, she said, but on your own terms. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Curtis agreed to sit on the porch with Yvette once more, not for an interview, but a single take. One man, one message. No edits. A gentle wind whispered through the tall pine trees as Yvette pressed record. Curtis turned to face the camera, his eyes steady, his breath deep and measured. My name is Curtis Berryman, he began quietly. I spent over 20 years in the Army. I never cared for the spotlight, never looked for applause. His voice didn't shake, it carried the weight of someone used to carrying more than just gear. Lately though, people have been telling my story for me. Some get it right, some don't. I'm not a hero, and I'm not a victim. I was just a man trying to get gas and go home. He paused, then continued. I didn't throw the first punch, I gave them every chance to step back. But they didn't. And when they came forward, I stood my ground. Not out of rage, out of necessity. That's what we're trained for. You protect with discipline, with calm, with purpose. His gaze didn't waver as he spoke. A lot of folks think being loud makes you strong, but real strength is knowing when not to move, when to hold firm. I'm not looking to be part of anyone's debate, he said. I just want people to understand there's power in being steady, in being still, in choosing your moment. When he finished, he looked at Yvette. She didn't say a word, just nodded, her face soft with quiet understanding. Curtis didn't ask where the video would end up. He already knew. By morning it had spread like fire across social media. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of them. Some called it the calmest rejection of toxic masculinity they'd ever seen. Others dismissed it as rehearsed. But those who really listened, wasn't performing. He wasn't asking for approval. He just wanted peace. But peace has a strange way of stirring up old ghosts. One of them was named Geneva Brock. She hadn't heard his name in over 10 years. Back then, they'd worked the same rotation at Fort Bliss, both freshly widowed. Both quietly broken, never romantic, but always there for each other when dinner alone felt unbearable. And then he'd transferred. Life moved. So did the silence between them. One evening in Camden, South Carolina, Geneva sat in her small kitchen scrolling videos. And then she heard a voice, deep, steady, familiar. Her breath caught. She leaned forward. Curtis, she whispered. He was older now, grayer, a little slower, but it was him. She watched the video twice that night. The next morning, she dug through an old Army contact list, Found a number, called twice, then left a voicemail. Curtis. It's Geneva. You probably didn't expect to hear from me. I saw the video. You haven't changed. And that's a good thing if you're open to talking. I'd really like to. Curtis didn't respond right away. He listened to the message 3 times, then sat outside on his porch for nearly an hour, just watching the sun inch down. Not because he didn't want to talk, but because for the first time in weeks, something had pulled him back to a simpler part of himself, one untouched by the noise of the internet. 2 days later, he called her. They spoke for an hour. Then again the next day. It wasn't heavy. It was light memories, laughter, the names of people they'd lost along the way. But eventually, the real talk surfaced. I saw what happened, Geneva said. That wasn't about who you are. That was about who they thought you were. Curtis nodded, even though she couldn't see it. They picked the wrong man. Happens a lot. Folks think being quiet means being weak. Sometimes, he added, being quiet takes more strength than anyone knows. You always had that kind of strength, she replied softly. He looked out at his yard. The sun was dipping, low again. Birds were calling. I don't think they'll come back, he said. I didn't shame them. I didn't drag it out. But I made sure they remembered me. Geneva was quiet, then asked, You think they learned something? Curtis leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under him. Maybe not today, he said, but next time they go looking for trouble, maybe they'll pause. That night, Curtis opened his notebook. On the first page, he wrote just 3 words. Know your line. He didn't need to add more. Those words held enough that the internet didn't let go easily. The video kept circulating think pieces, reaction clips, debates. Some praised him, some criticized. But Curtis didn't respond to any of it. What mattered were the quiet messages, handwritten notes from veterans, a thank you card from the gas station clerk, even a teenager who messaged him to say she saw something different in him, something wrong in her own father. Curtis never set out to be a symbol. He just stood when the moment demanded it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't reach for a weapon. He used the one thing he'd spent his life perfecting: his presence. Steady, unshaken. And when the internet moved on, when the views faded and the headlines lost interest, Curtis remained who he'd always been, a man who didn't start the fight.